We're proud to present Seller Sessions live in London, where we'll be flying in some of the world's most advanced Amazon educators. The event will be held at the prestigious David Game Keynote Theatre. Alongside myself will be Ivan Demirov, who is known for breaking lots of trends on Amazon, Anthony Lee, one of the early innovators of the blast ranking method and published author. We'll also be flying in show favourites Liran Hirschkorn and Paul Harvey. Over the coming weeks, we'll be announcing more speakers and content. So if you want to join in the fun with other super smart Amazon sellers and brands, then visit sellersessions.com/live and grab super early bird tickets before they go to full admission. We'd like to say a big thank you to all of our media partners, which include GS1 UK, Web Retailer, River Cleaner, Sixleaf, Orange Click and Amazing Freedom. We look forward to seeing you all in London on June 1st. Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today I bring back Liran Hirschkorn. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about taking the emotion out of optimization, separating yourself from your business and looking at things objectively. This includes your data, your listings, search term reports. There's so many things that we can cover, which we'll do. But Liran, why don't you kick off for us? Give us some things that you've been thinking about recently.
Yeah, well, so what I've been thinking about recently is looking at people's listings is that, I think all of us have a sense of being somewhat emotionally tied to a product. I'll give you an example. I had a product that for a while, when I started this brand a couple of years ago, I wanted to be sort of the premium product in the category. I wanted to be, I had better packaging, better design. I wanted to be the premium product. But sometimes on Amazon, you have to sacrifice a little bit from your idealized goal of what you want to be in order to gain traction. So, I might not want to, this is a high price product and I might not want to run, a 20% coupon or, I might not want to run, a sale at a lower price, but it's actually something I really need to do in order to gain traction. So in the future, I'll be able to charge that premium price. And, I think that's, the idea here is talking about looking at your listing objectively and not just having this, emotional tie-in to a product that, somebody else coming in would actually have a totally different idea if it wasn't their product on how what the best idea would be in order to gain traction with that product. And, the goal of this, discussion is to get you to look at your product as an outsider, as not somebody that's emotionally tied to, one specific thing like price, for example.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So if we talk about, let's just go into, say, we were talking about off call, like images and stuff. Let's bring it around to some of the people's listings I look at. They're so tied into the business, like I said, and I'm not. I can look at stuff objectively and they're kind enough to allow me to say, right, your images are not up to scratch or this doesn't work. And they probably also know that deep down. I think this is more to do so with PPC. Like everyone has to go through a discovery phase, but then they hold on to search terms because they want them and willing them to work. But the data doesn't have, there's not enough data there to confirm that. I don't like looking at something and trying to make an informed decision in the last 30 days, unless it's had 10 sales or more on that search term. But there's so many different variables there or why you'd get rid of a search term. But then you do need statistical significance to reach to make an informed decision. And I think I can fall victim to it on my products. If I'm too close to it, do I give up that main search term that I've spent quite a lot of money on PPC to help with organic ranking? Sometimes you have to let those go. Sometimes you've got search terms that you have spent money on, and then you've got it to a place where in order to keep it there in that position, you have to keep spending money on PPC. But what that does, that's either just taking your PPC to break even, right? So argument's sake, let's just say you spend X amount of money and that on PPC, but you're burning through your PPC sales in terms of the margin, and then you're eating some of your organic sale margin, right?
Right.
And then you get to the stage where you're spending this, but you're eating up, say, 75% of the 100% budget across both the organic and the PPC sales, right? So that's not a necessarily good place to be in long term, because you're working for Amazon, you're working for the customer, you're spending money on cash flow, and you're only seeing 25% of the total profits across the
Right.
100% available across two verticals, organic and obviously the
PPC.
sales, right? You
Right.
may find that if you back off spending money on that search term and just rely on organically and sit in position number 8, that could be the difference between break-even PPC and making all the margin on your organic sales through being a position up. Sure, I'm sure you'll have less sales selling through. But once you've done all the numbers, you may actually find it's safer to sell 500 units instead of 1,000. Because on 1,000 units, you break even and you're working for Amazon and the customer. But on 500 units, as an example, is where you actually make your money, because you're going up further in terms of position on the main search term. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
Some people are scared of letting that go. You've got to find out that if you stop spending money on that keyword, what happens? Because in some cases, you might drop so far back and there's not enough distribution in terms of sales that position 5 and position 8 could be the difference between 1,000 units and 200 units, and not 500 units. Does that make sense? It's all going to come down to the vertical and stuff. But sometimes you may be fearful of taking that risk. Yeah. But you can always dial up that PPC again on that search term and burn away again and eat up the money that you just gained back from where you didn't burn it, where you lost positioning, as long as you time it right. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. And I've seen sellers that, have tested this and have been in the number one organic position and pulled back PPC, and it didn't affect their sales at all. Yeah. Because they were splitting the clicks before between the top PPC position and their organic position. And now they were still getting enough clicks on the number one organic position where it wasn't hurting their sales. So so having the ability to think about these things and then to test them, and then be willing to test them makes a lot of sense. Not having fear around it. And then, the other thing is that if you have a new product, a keyword may not work for you today. And you might make it a negative keyword, but maybe you revisit that in 2 months when you have, 10 reviews on the product or 20 reviews on the product, and come back and test that keyword again, because now you're sort of a different product compared to what you were 2 months ago with that review. So I think it's the idea of looking at things objectively and not trying to make emotional decisions. Definitely, I think when it comes to to price, recently I was looking at a seller's listing. They wanted to target a specific keyword, go for the top of search placement, and they're competing with another seller that has 800 reviews. They're a new product, but they're priced it's like a $20-something product, and they're priced $3 higher than their competitor. And when I look at it, my first thing was, you have no reviews, you're a new product, and you're competing with these guys with 800 reviews, and you're priced more. It doesn't make sense. If we want to try to compete for this keyword, we need to be more aggressive. And that's something that, I can immediately see, because it's not my product. Yeah. But they're thinking, okay, what's the price I need to sell in terms of margin? What's the ultimate price I want to sell at? And they told me, but we have this one feature that this other product doesn't have. But none of that matters, right? I mean, they have 800 reviews. You're sitting right along them, and your products look almost identical, except for a few minor things. You're gonna need to look at your pricing and your listing as if it's not yours, in order to say, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense at all. And I think you can get a lot more traction that way by, not having this emotional tie or to a product.
Yeah. I mean, some quick wins, like from search term reports that you can look at if you're a bit sure about being, should I use that search term any longer, is just look at the ratio of conversion, how many clicks to conversion. That's a real good indicator of whether you should spend money. Another thing I always say to people is they use search terms, they're in Campaign Manager or their software package, and they're just looking at pure data. Go and look at the search pages, the search results. Use your own eyes. Like, take that search term and search it for yourself. Be objective. Look at the search results page and say, does your product fit? Because I think the biggest thing that some people go for, let's just say they want to do a water bottle. Worst thing in the product in the world. I've dealt with lots of people that had to liquidate them. It's a very common thing, a bit like the garlic press. Let's say you're taking a water bottle, right? Now, a water bottle can be worth 99 cents, in the US to $3, or it can be one of those flash ones that you put fruit in that comes nice customized and costs you $16.99 or something,
Right.
But although it's a water bottle, is that the right search term for you? Because the water bottle is in the broadest sense, it's got the most search volume. So inherently you want to go after that. But so does everyone else. I think they're called infusion bottles. So what you would do is in that case is that you won't go after water bottle. You're going after infusion bottle, if that's the right term. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I can't remember now. I need to fact check that after. But there gives an example when people do not want to let go. But then one of the things is you go, well, I'm spending a fortune on this search term that everyone else is going after. Effectively, it is the right search term, but I've not niched down. Really, what I want is I don't want to look at page one and all those bottles are selling between $1.99 and $6.99 and mine's $12.99. I shouldn't really be going after that search term.
Right.
Do you see where I'm coming from? Because some search terms, you've got to look at the relationship between the price as well. If the average price of the page is really low and you're trying to sell premium product on the page, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. It's okay for Apple to sell computers 6 to 8 times more expensive than the rest because they've got the brand recognition for years, but you don't have the luxury to do that on your water bottle.
Right. And, it brings up a good point, which is, if you're using, a variety of strategies to rank your product, you're using PPC, maybe you're also using giveaways. It makes a lot of sense to first test PPC on your product because, when you're doing a giveaway, you're obviously artificially getting artificial sales, and then you rank and you hope that you're going to stay there and keep getting future sales. But if you first test some PPC, test it at the top of the search results or the first page with a high bid. If your conversions aren't there, if you're not converting enough, then you're certainly not going to convert when you get to the first page organically, and it'll be a waste of your money to try to give away hundreds of units to try to rank for that keyword. So testing PPC, for example, and kind of identifying across a variety of keywords what are going to be the keywords that actually convert, and letting the market sort of decide what keywords are actually relevant to your product. I think is a great strategy, and then utilizing some of that search term data to add back keywords into your listing, or if you are going to do a giveaway, decide, okay, this keyword has converted very well for me. It's not my main number one keyword, but it's converted very well. It's a long tail, and I should go for that in terms of trying to focus and rank for that keyword, and utilizing PPC. So, definitely, I agree with you on being objective and sort of letting the market also decide what actually is the best fit for your product. And water bottle is not going to be the best target for infusion water bottle because most of the people looking for a water bottle are not necessarily looking for something they could put fruit in.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, a few other metrics I always say to people that they miss, because a lot of people just put a lot of focus around ACOS. I'm a big fan of doing sales versus PPC spend as a metric and orders per month via PPC. That gives you, and you measure these over time because you want to see these kind of go up or down depending on the metric, or your organic to PPC ratio. That's a good indicator as well. Or average spend per PPC sale. Can you bring that down over a period of time? Or average revenue per PPC sale. Average clicks to PPC conversion, which I mentioned earlier on. And then another one to look at, which you can do easy in your search term reports, but then you map them out over a period of time. Average impressions to PPC conversion. When you measure them over time, you can see whether you're dialing in or you're getting further away from the metrics that you're trying to achieve. It's not something that you can just look at, but you just need to know a little bit about Excel, pull out the data over the period of time and start measuring those. And that can start to give you a real feel of the direction that you're going in.
Yes. Yes. And, on a separate note, I recently saw an article and this will be interesting if this comes out. I recently saw an article that said that Amazon would allow you to create ads for reviews on the
Wow.
platform, retargeting people who bought from you
Yeah.
with an ad for review, which is sort of genius by Amazon in terms of like increasing their advertising revenue. Could be a good way for sellers to get reviews, but potentially something that'll be coming. But going back to PPC, yeah, I think you need to look at your sort of. I think what you're talking about is like your true ACOS, right?
Yeah.
Taking a look at your total sales, your PPC and organic, and combining it, and then also make sure that you're tracking your keyword rankings for your most important keywords, because
Mm.
if you have that high ACOS of 50%, but you see that you're trending, that your rankings keep trending higher, then yeah, you might want to keep that ACOS
Yeah.
at that level as you keep progressing up, and then maybe pull back. Versus, if you're not moving up in the rankings, you might decide you want to kind of pull back on some bids
Yeah.
to reduce the ACOS. So I think looking at all these metrics is really important, especially your, like you said, your true ACOS. It also makes sure that you're keeping your keyword rankings. There's so many sellers I know that aren't measuring, their keyword rankings, which is so important.
Yeah.
As well as measuring, I'll add that, as well as measuring your sponsored ad rankings, which I think is important too. I know Viral Launch recently came out with ranking your sponsored ad rankings in some of their tools.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's important that a lot of people don't do, is kind of charting where you are in terms of your sponsored ad position,
Mm.
and you can actually overlay like BSR over it and see if your sponsored ad positioning is actually impacting your.
We're doing a lot of experiments at the moment at the agency with regards to ad positioning. We've got a lot of data points. I'll be covering some of this in some upcoming speaking engagements. But you're right, the ad position is playing a big role. You've seen with the ad placement reports, you've seen with some of the little hacks that people like Casey from Viral Launch,
Yep.
they've done a blog post. I can't remember the name of the blog post now, but they were talking about the product pages, a little
Yeah.
hack for that in terms of using the bid multiplier.
Yes.
So look at that on Casey's blog, which is the Viral Launch blog, and there's a long post on that. But I think, yeah, with the way that everything's going with Amazon and the advertising platform, you need to be cuter now in terms of what you're doing, and ad position plays a big part, especially if you've got an account when you've got 500 SKUs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's something I think you'll see probably more sellers starting to track. That sellers really haven't been tracking, and yeah, it's really important, because your results in ad position 1 and ad position 4 are going to be vastly different. And so keeping on top of your, not just your organic rankings, but sponsored ad rankings.
Yeah, I mean,
really important.
another thing is using an 80-20 rule, right? Which people are scared to do. Let's just say we don't do AMS ads on the agency, but we've taken on clients that have been running AMS ads, which only make up a tiny proportion. We've looked at it; they make up a tiny proportion to, say, the sponsored product ads. So when you do all the calculations, and I've set them down, and I said, like, looking at all these campaigns here, you've got all of these campaigns in excess of 100 ACOS. You've been running them for a year. You've gathered all the data that you're going to gather. Your ACOS is, say, 30%. You've got 120 ACOS here. The chances of you getting anywhere near your target ACOS is very slim now. I'm not saying everyone's impossible, because there's so many different variables, but if you've been in consistent mode trying to bring something from 120 down to 30, reality says you're never going to get it to 30.
Right.
So you can give up, but it's having the balls to cut it away, because all that does is that's spending money. So when I've done a chop down on their accounts with them, unless there's obviously room for upwards expansion and growth, there's a big chunk there where I'm going, well, what would you prefer? Do you want to focus on this side that makes money? Or do you want to run these campaigns? We can drop the bids, run below ACOS on these campaigns, and then you haven't got so much optimization to do. You're keeping track of everything, and which your VA can do is say, right, anything over this ACOS, let us know. But when you're dancing way above your ACOS and you're trying to dial in, you could spend a lot of time on something that you're never going to get to your ideal ACOS. So don't waste your time now. you have to take an informed decision and remove it. And I'm not talking about running after 2 weeks. I'm talking about if you're running the same campaign for 6 or 8 months, and then you're dialing up and down the bids to the point where you either get any impressions or you don't get any impressions.
Right.
Then you're not going to get where you want to go, because in terms of the auction, people are already bidding higher than you. They're not going to appear. Therefore, you've got no impressions. Make sense?
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's the point. Like, it's very easy for you to look at it and say, hey, what are you doing here? Where, as the product owner yourself, you're sort of, you might keep chasing it for too long, right? Trying to optimize for too long, when you're like, look, the reality is it's not going to happen. And, the idea of this show is to go back to your listings and look at it as if they're not yours, right? Try to pinpoint all the things in your account that are things you shouldn't go after anymore, things you should be, going after more aggressively. Your pricing, your keyword strategy, everything that you're doing right now, go back as if it's not yours, and give yourself the advice that you really need around it. That sometimes you're too far caught in the forest to see the trees, right? And you need to take a step back outside of it to sort of take a reanalysis of what you're doing. And, if there's a particular keyword or something that you really want to go after, then you need to realize, okay, what is it going to take to do that? How aggressive do I need to be? What do I need to change in order to obtain it? Or if I'm not willing to do it, I should stop sort of targeting that, or stop going after that. And look at things objectively.
No, makes total sense. The other thing that I would suggest for people to do as well, and it's quite easy, take a few friends that you've not bent their ear about how you sell on Amazon and showed them their product. You know how you can get obsessed with it and they're sick of hearing you talk about Amazon. Take them away, that group. Find another group that you've got a set of friends, and then send them a link to your listing and get on the phone with them. Don't ask them what they like. Ask them what they don't like. And would they buy it? Don't prompt them into, have a set of 5 questions, phone 5 different people, send over the link, and while you're on the phone to them and they're looking at it on their computer, ask them 5 questions what they don't like about the listing. Because you're not interested in what they do like. You want to know what they don't like. Could it be a trust thing? Do they like the images? Do they think the price is too broad? Do they understand what you're writing on the listing? Think of those things, because you're not after a slap on the back. You're looking for a critique. You're looking for them holes in your listing.
Yep. And there's also some services out there like PickFu, where, you can go on and you can post, your image and a competitor image, or 2 different images of yours. Ask people which they like better, two listings, ask people if they would buy A or B and why. And so you can use these sort of survey type websites to also get really quick, fast feedback. In fact, I think with PickFu, you can pay a little bit more to specifically target Amazon Prime customers who would give you feedback, one compared to the other. So it's a good idea to to go and do that and get some objective feedback on your product listing.
Sounds good. One thing I want to finish on, let's talk about estimation tools, because obviously people see that as like the Bible. There's no guarantees in this world on anything. Just because at 1 month you've seen estimation data on a software tool for the product research that you're doing, and it's got good turnover, etc., that don't mean that's all going to reflect back on you, and you are going to get the same results as them.
Right.
You have to be objective about it. It's a bit like the business plan. You're either 100% right or you're going to be 100% wrong. I've never seen a business plan that's ever gone to plan.
Right.
So don't expect that with a tool as well. So you have to be more conservative with your estimates. So you need to woefully underestimate or overestimate, depending on what metrics you're looking at.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. That you're not you're going to show up on page 1 and suddenly do the same revenue as like everybody else on page 1 is not necessarily the case. I also think that the better you are at differentiating your product. One thing that I see is part of our course group, people can submit their product ideas to us on a guide, and we give them advice whether or not they should launch a product. And one of the questions that we ask is, what are you doing to differentiate the product, or what's your sort of angle? And some people say, well, I'm going to have a better listing and better images. And, that's not really in my opinion, really good enough unless you're going into a very niche market with like one or two competitors. It's generally not going to be good enough to, come in. So you need to answer the question of when you show up on page one for this keyword, why is somebody going to buy from you? Just because you're on page one? Or is there a particular reason? Have you made some improvements? Have you bundled something in? Have you made changes to the product that people want? And that's really, I think, the way that you can sort of take market share and get more of those sales. But I agree on the estimates. I think it's very difficult to try to predict, month one what your product is going to do in terms of sales, and how much sales you're going to take away from the competition.
Yeah, I think as well is that it's once you get obsessed down that route, if you're building a brand and you're building products within that line, you can actually, as long as there's enough search volume, I think that's the most difficult part. If you've looked at a product that you want to sell, unless it's got 2 or 3 decent search terms that are very, very relevant to your product, you could fall into that category of missing the boat. If you don't meet the relevance requirements,
right,
you've at least with a multitude of keywords, you've got something to choose from. Like even if you add them up and you've got a bit from each, because often when I see in campaigns and sales, after you've done your discovery phase, you're back down to a handful of search terms, which are the main drivers of all your sales. And the rest
right,
of all also rents. You've got your macro conversions and your micro conversions. And one thing that you can make a mistake of is going after a market that, let's just say you've got 50,000, I'm just throwing arbitrary numbers here, 50,000 searches on keyword 1, but 5,000 searches on keyword 2 and 2,000 searches on keyword 3. You're going to struggle there unless you get something going with keyword number 1. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
So if you don't resonate with keyword number 1, which comes into the visual aspect of looking at your listings objectively, you go after water bottle and you're doing some sort of metal water bottle with 2,000 search terms where you don't have relevance around that search term, no matter how large the search term is. If you don't resonate with that, let's say you can't pick that up in PPC or you don't index for that search term for some reason, you're blown it in terms of launch. It's the same as if the search term is too low searches a month to generate any sales. No matter what work you do, you're better off being in the competitive arena because at least you've got something to compete against. At least you've got some sales share that you can take away. But if you go after too small a market, there's nothing to win.
Right.
You can't sell what's not there because we're in a supply and demand marketplace.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Like I've seen, products that do well, are those ones that have, you have a keyword that has 15,000 searches and you have another one that has 9,000, another one that has 6,000 and 5,000. And you have a bunch of these keywords that you can sort of go after and you're not just relying on one main keyword. I have somebody I'm working with now that, there's pretty much, and they already brought this product in and there's pretty much 2 keywords, one with 36,000 searches, one with like 5,000, and that's it. And it's you're either going to make it on those keywords or you're going to die on those keywords. And that's it. And that's kind of a dangerous position.
We made that mistake in Japan. I call it zero-sum game. There's simply one search term, one. There's not even any long tail off it because it was pathetic. You either got it or you didn't. And we tried to do it and burnt a load of money on PPC. It didn't work. We had to rank it doing giveaways. And it's difficult back then to do it in Japan because there was no tools around to do it. So we're doing Facebook landing pages and stuff like that. Otherwise, it would have been a complete failure. We wouldn't have been able to rank it because the cost per click was so high because everyone's going after this main search term. And also on desktop, what I realized is that main search term it didn't have a top of page results. It only had ads at the bottom below the fold.
Oh, man.
That was a killer as well. It was okay on mobile, but on desktop, it was ruined, So we learned a big lesson there. So it was lucky that we'd done giveaways that saved us. I know there's more tools now, 2 or 3 years on for Japan, but that was a scary time. So just always make sure that when you're looking at stuff, not only being objective, you've got to think about relevance. And if keyword A doesn't work out, what is your plan B? Right.
Yes. I think that's a great thing to leave people off with. If plan A doesn't work, what's plan B for this product?
It's cool. Excellent. So how can people reach you?
So you can email me, Liran at amazingfreedom.com. I'm on Facebook. We have Amazing Freedom Group and the Amazon Seller Podcast.
And you've got an event coming up in China, haven't you?
Yes. So we actually have a few spots left. We're taking a small group to China. It's amazingfreedom.com/China to the global we're speaking at Global Sources and the Canton Fair. And I'm looking forward to speaking at Seller Sessions Live in the UK coming up in June.
Yep. So that's June 1st. If you want tickets for that, go to sellersessions.com/live. Also, with regards to the case studies I mentioned earlier on, if you want to have a look at some data, I produced some case studies from our agency, gives you some metrics to work from. If you go to sellersessions.com/case-studies, you can grab them there. Thank you for joining us today, guys. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.